Okinawa, Japan. Many of you, I think, have heard about Okinawa. It's a kind of Japanese version of a tropical paradise, a very popular place for those looking to relax. The population here is relatively small, and most people lead a Western lifestyle. This is easily explained since a quarter of the island's territory is occupied by US military bases. In fact, it all started with one of these bases. An American Marine was stationed there who would set off a chain of events that would later shock all of Japan with a high chance of turning into a real political scandal. Welcome to my channel. Here, I detail real crimes and strange phenomena. If you like this kind of content, subscribe and let's dive right into the case of Rina Shimabukuro. In the city of Uruma on Okinawa, there lived a 20-year-old girl named Rina Shimabukuro. At that time, she had been working in an office for a while, which for her age was respectable. She was known for her independence and determination. These qualities were remembered by her colleagues, acquaintances, and family. She grew up as an only child, was reserved, but thanks to her polite and empathetic behavior, she was liked by those around her. While growing up, Rina often dreamed of having siblings with whom she could share her interests, and as an adult, Rina was passionate about having children, stating she wanted to have around 6. Fate was kind to her because by 2015, Rina had started a relationship with a local Okinawan whose identity was kept private by Japanese media to protect his privacy. Their relationship developed to the point where they rented an apartment and began living together. Weekdays were occupied with work, and weekends were cherished moments of togetherness. Over the following months, everything was going well for the couple, and besides, Rina would come out of her shell in the company of friends, not hesitating to showcase her singing and dancing abilities. Generally, in Japan, attitudes towards studies are overly respectful and serious. So, on April 28, 2016, Rina was working in the office. The workday was tough, and she decided she needed to stretch her legs around 8 p.m. She threw on a black parka and magenta sneakers and went for an evening walk. She communicated with her boyfriend through the Line app, a popular messenger in Japan, similar to Telegram or WhatsApp. She wrote to him about her desire to take a walk and added that she would return late in the evening, which was nothing unusual. She often walked after work along the water canal, which was her usual route. Residential complexes, shops, and restaurants lined one side, while the other bank was an industrial zone with factories, warehouses, and shipping companies that operated until late at night. Meanwhile, her boyfriend was patiently waiting for Rina to return home. However, as time passed and the clock struck midnight, he began to feel anxious. Only at 2 a.m. did he send her a message wishing her good night, and shortly after it was marked as read, which calmed him down a bit. Maybe she met a friend and decided to chat. After all, in Japan, it's customary to keep emotions to oneself, so he went to sleep hoping to discuss everything with Rina in the morning. But as you might have guessed, the girl never returned home and did not reply to his message, despite it being marked as read. Weighing all the pros and cons, and considering that Rina didn't even take her wallet and couldn't have gone far, the next morning, her boyfriend reported her missing to the police. The police promptly arrived at the house and began an investigation, extracting as much useful information as possible from Rina's worried boyfriend. Meanwhile, Rina's friends tried to conduct their own investigation. They raised the issue of her disappearance on social media, where people actively started speculating about what had happened. For instance, Some believed she might have been abducted by a religious cult. Others somehow suspected the aforementioned boyfriend, perhaps because he was also an Okinawan and knew the area well. Simultaneously, the police were not wasting time and were getting closer to the truth about this incident. Despite many missing person posters being distributed in the early days, not a single piece of evidence or lead was found. The breakthrough in the case was provided by digital technology. Using GPS, the police were able to track the location of her phone to the last geolocation sent to the server. This place turned out to be the industrial zone by the water canal where she usually walked. Then the police reviewed surveillance camera footage and examined hundreds of vehicles that were captured on that unfortunate evening. But the real breakthrough in the case occurred when a certain owner of a red SUV was brought in for questioning. This was 32-year-old African-American Kenneth Franklin Gassan, a former Marine who had served in Okinawa for several years. In 2011, he was transferred back to the USA. In 2014, after being honorably discharged, he returned to Okinawa. There, he found a job with a company that provides internet and television services on American bases, and he married a local woman, whom neighbors described as kind and very beautiful. Additionally, he took her surname, Shinza, and soon they had a child. It seemed Kenneth was living a normal life, blending in. Then, in May 2016, just a couple of months after the birth of his child, Kenneth's car was captured by cameras near the place and time of Rina's disappearance. It was claimed that the driver of the red SUV was behaving erratically. Naturally, the police had questions for him, but before delving into Kenneth's character, it's necessary to take a step back. This is one of those stories where the context is as important as the events themselves. As I mentioned, a substantial part of Okinawa is occupied by US military bases, a point of contention for decades. It reached the point where conflicts led to protests, the largest of which occurred in 1995. The cause was the atrocities committed against a 12-year-old Okinawan girl by 3 US Marines. Protesters demanded a reduction in the number of US military bases and the implementation of stricter measures to prevent such incidents in the future. Despite government promises to consider the interests of Okinawans, the process of reducing military bases was slow and faced various political obstacles as usual. Returning to the case of Rina Shimabukuro, a similar pattern emerged. The police had caught the right person. Kenneth Gassan confessed everything and led the officers to her body. It was in a forested area where investigators found a black suitcase containing the decomposing body of a young woman. After 20 days in the Okinawan heat, her body had become unrecognizable. Subsequent DNA analysis confirmed her identity, and tragically, it was the body of Rina Shimabukuro. Kenneth did not withhold information from the authorities and recounted the events of that evening. While driving through Uruma, Kenneth noticed a short girl walking alone in the dusk. It should be noted that he had mental issues. He claimed that from early childhood, he was plagued by dark thoughts, fantasizing about kidnapping and holding girls, and often thinking about death. To be honest, he joined the Marines to satisfy his sick desires. Despite being unfit for service due to health reasons, Kenneth found a way to deceive the commission and enlist. He had many other fantasies, but they are not for YouTube. The main point is that he had serious mental health issues. That evening when he saw Rina, the opportunity seemed perfect to him. According to Kenneth, it was fate. Kenneth parked by the road, got out of the car, and started following the girl closely, gradually approaching her. He silently came up behind her and struck her on the head with a metal rod. He grabbed her and dragged her to a quiet place. There, he attacked her again. However, the plan changed when he realized that Rina was still conscious. She resisted and even called for help. Then, in a fit of rage, Kenneth used physical force and then pulled out a knife to finish what he had started. He returned to his car, grabbed a black suitcase, and placed his victim inside, setting the suitcase on the back seat. He drove about 20 kilometers from the crime scene, stopped on the side of a quiet road, and threw the suitcase into the bushes as far as he could. There, Rina would remain hidden from prying eyes for 22 days. Kenneth then returned to his wife and newborn child, acting as if nothing unusual had happened. In the following days, he anxiously awaited the police knocking on his door. But as days turned into weeks, his confidence grew. He returned to his normal life and even believed he had gotten away with it. However, as we all know, that was not the case. Kenneth was charged with the crime. Rina's parents demanded the death penalty, which is extremely rare in Japan. But fortunately for Kenneth, it was not imposed. Instead, the judge sentenced him to life imprisonment, stating that there was no room for leniency in the case of such a brutal and senseless crime. Society was utterly shocked, especially the Okinawans. Protests occurred, but they were not as large as those in 1995 concerning the 12-year-old girl. Even then, US President Barack Obama was forced to apologize for this crime during his visit to Hiroshima in May 2016. However, no decisive action was taken by the authorities following this incident, which contrasts sharply with the response in 1995. Why did it end there? Rina was a young woman just starting her adult life, planning her future, including marriage and family. But tragically, her dreams were brutally taken away by an unstable individual. She was simply not given a chance, all because of the actions of one person. Thank you for watching.